Hello and welcome to another edition of Unpluggered. Sadly, a bit of a case of rinse and repeat from the last few weeks where there was a lot of encouragement, but there was also some frustration in another loss where we did quite a bit right and failed to execute. And it feels like that's not just a 3-week story. It feels like when we started this podcast in the middle of 2019, and you could almost say that about every one of our losses since then. It's been a problem that's been endemic, if that's the right word, at the club for as long as I can remember, an ability to, maybe dictate the way the game's being played, but horrible movement inside 50 and then horrible conversion when those chances come. And we never really looked like winning the game, but we probably should have won the game based on most of the stats. And I know Champion Data's expected score can be taken with a grain of salt, but when you win contested possession and inside 50s and tackles and disposals and territory and all of that type of stuff, you probably should win. And similar to the last couple of weeks, Collingwood were better for longer. Fremantle were just a bit more efficient, and Hawthorn were a bit more efficient as well, which was probably always likely to happen, but a pretty frustrating watch all the same. A reminder also that we are backing up at Marvel again this week, and Unpluggered proud to partner with Ticketverse for the 2025 AFL season. Get premium seats at Marvel Stadium's Medallion Club for Saints games with exclusive access to fine dining, bars and more. Visit ticketverse.com.au to explore your options. Tickets sorted, and stay tuned to our socials. We might have some giveaways there potentially. And Nick, I found large parts of this game incredibly frustrating to watch, but there are obviously still parts of it that you liked. It's very difficult to get out of that mindset where it's like the results doesn't matter. There's a short game and a long game. It always matters, but it's a case of, the long game's building, but the short game can still give you the shits.
100%. I think, it's a matter of, I guess, resetting the expectations of the year. And I think we all kind of spoke, pre-season early on in the year that we didn't think that we were a bottom 4 team. And it turns out that maybe we are, but I think that there are some things that we didn't envisage, going into the season that have contributed to that. But yeah, I think there is. It's frustrating. It was a really tough watch, that game, because I think we did a lot right, and I thought the effort was there, the competitive intent was there. I thought the bones of a good performance were there, but just couldn't do the things to get you over the line that good teams do. And ultimately things like conversion and efficiency inside 50 and all those types of things that, when games are on the line, good teams step up and they do those things. They kick straight and they convert opportunities and all of those sorts of things. And, you said it, Darren, in terms of all the kind of key metrics that you look at if you didn't know the score of that game, you just went looked at the stats. You go, St Kilda probably won that by a couple of goals. And the fact that, the scoreline was reversed essentially, kind of speaks to that. But it is frustrating when you have a performance that has, the ability to win you games of football, especially against good teams, and you just don't finish it off. You don't do the things that you can do, and ultimately, they are some of the most basic fundamental skills of our game. Kicking a ball straight. Time and time again, it should be basic fundamental that every player, if you reach the AFL level, every player should kick a bunch of those shots at goal. And that's frustrating in the very, very short term because, we want to win. We've had enough of losing. We've seen enough losses over our lifetime. I can only imagine what it's like for those 60, 70, 80-year-olds, and the losses that they've watched. But So that's frustrating, but you're right. The long game is different. And I think that there are plenty of positives to come out of that in terms of the way that we are developing our structure, the way that we're developing our squad, the rotations, the personnel, etc. There's enough there in terms of blue skies ahead and green shoots or whatever metaphor you want to use, to be positive about what's coming.
Brendan Bolton's in our coach's box, and I think he coined that phrase many years ago when he was coaching
the green shoot.
When he was coaching the Blues. But yeah, H, it was you looked at that say, the Freo game in the first quarter when we didn't convert, had we have done so, our 14-point lead in the last quarter might have been 5 goals. Collingwood, late second quarter, early third quarter, we were all over them. We got back level. We probably should have gone a couple of goals past them. We didn't. That halted any chance. And then this game, you look at the start of the game, then you look at the start of the second half when we were all over them and kicked 4 behinds and 1 out in the full, and they go forward and kick 2 goals in a minute. And that's the point where you're tearing your hair out thinking that's ridiculous. But yeah, I guess we've seen a lot of that before, and it wasn't. We can't sit there and say we're unlucky because we do it every week.
Yeah, it's become a common theme. We do all that hard work and then just let ourselves down at the final part, and that's where it's been an issue for probably a number of years now. We've worked so hard over a long period of time and just let ourselves down at the last hurdle. It's yes, we're depleted up there. You just got to, you keep looking at it and thinking the difference that King makes up in a forward line. You add him in there, the defense has to shuffle. Sharman doesn't get the best defender the whole night. Keeler doesn't get the second best. The players move. The game changes completely. And yeah, there's like you got that, but then you've got to actually convert it as well. And I feel it's something's just fallen off. We were doing pretty well early in the year, to be honest. The kicking was pretty good. Something, I don't know whether the winter winds have come through and they're causing us issue at training and we're kicking 6 meters to the right or something, or what's going on down there, and we're some reason bringing that to the game on the weekend. But yeah, it's just a confidence killer, a coach killer. It's yeah, you see it, like, not to dump it on a young kid, but Tauru gets this towering mark and lifts the team and everything and goes back and misses. That moment there, he kicks that. How much does that get the team up and about? How much does that spur us on? So it's just little things, and that's all it is. We convert on Saturday night. We kick, say, 17-7 or something. We're absolutely flying. We probably left 3 or 4 goals out that we didn't even get a point with as well. Sharman's kick, they kick straight to the player, running to the line.
Mason Wood in the last quarter
that fell short. We left 6-7 goals out there, I reckon, at least.
And the ones we missed, they would usually go coast to coast, so it would be a double effect where. But yeah, the Sharman one was ridiculous, and there were a couple of instances, like I think Steele and Hill took like 2 bounces running down the wing. We had 2 players inside 50 and one of them trying to cover both, and the players caught in 2 minds and then hits up their loose player, and I'm like, it's insane. Like I can't think of a side that would not kick a goal in that scenario, and we lace out the only opposition player there, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, and they're the ones that make you angry. But, I mean, you mentioned Tauru, H. I actually laughed when he took that mark because I'm like, you can't be doing that at that age. That's that was one of those moments where you're like, yeah, okay, like all those spoils the week before, but like, yep, let's go forward and jump over a pack and take a big clunk.
And the scary thing is he'll only get better at that.
Correct.
That's right, yeah.
Which is the scary thing to look at and go, he could do something unbelievable at some point. He'll be jumping over packs, and the best thing is he's holding on to these too. There hasn't been, like, he's run under a couple. He sort of misjudged the flight on a couple we've seen. There was one that landed straight in the hand of their forward, and they went back into the goal. But just misjudged the flight a couple of times.
One that bounced off his chest as well. It's like he takes these unbelievable ones, hands up, and then ones hit him flush on the chest and it bounces off.
Yeah, but that will improve, and those won't happen. And just looking at where the height he can reach, there's going to be not a lot of players who are going to be able to outmark him. It's going to be, something to watch.
I mean, you also look at the way Brendan Goddard developed, and I know we've spoken about Goddard with Filippo and those sorts of things, but kids that are that big and have that body at that age often don't quite know how to use it, and then still trying to work out, the body weight and their positioning and how to use their body to advantage. And we're going to see him muck up a bunch. He's going to give away some free kicks. He's going to get in the wrong positions and misread things because he's in the wrong positions, etc. But like you said, he's just going to keep getting better as he adapts to the speed of the game and the strength and the power of his opponents and his own strength and power. It's super exciting. It's super exciting.
The fact that he looks like Trevor Barker is not his fault. And look, sport's a romantic game, so you can't help fans are going to make those sorts of comparisons. But, you're not trying to put pressure on him. That's just the reality of the situation. He looks like Trevor Barker and Nick Riewoldt, and with just physically, I'm not saying it's the same player, but, it is exciting. And, Bruce Eva, I was messaging him after the game. He was talking to the parents, after the game, and they spoke about how he was just really nervous when he had that shot at goal. He'd taken this mark. He was looking at his first goal in league footy and obviously just fluffed it a little bit. But they were saying that he's absolutely loving it. He's having the time of his life, and
he seems like it.
Yeah, and the family's getting around it too. I think his mum's doing all this Instagram stuff every week about the footy family and all of that. So
sisters have been on Instagram wearing the Saints gear and that sort of stuff, because I think they were a Collingwood family before.
Collingwood. I think I saw one of them with a Collingwood scarf on. Yeah. So it'd be nice to pinch them. That'd be good.
Good Gippsland stock, so you don't have to worry about homesickness or anything. That should be all right. Yeah.
And good Warrigal stock.
Yeah, that's right. So, at Warrigal drew an area, the honour roll through that part of the world is extraordinary. The Ablets and the Tucks and everyone else. So,
I didn't quite make it, but yeah.
Hopefully, I was born in Warrigal as well, so I put my hand up, and so there's another one. But yeah, it was all of that stuff's pretty encouraging. In terms of the other little subplots, so we'll obviously give it away with some of our votes and stuff like that. Wanganeen-Milera, 33 kicks, 1,000 metres gained, 43 possessions, all sorts of records, most possessions by a Saint in 10 years and all of that type of stuff. And
he's second in the league for disposals as well, behind Nick Davis. I think he's nine behind or something.
He was, I reckon he was 8 behind going into the round. Dacos had 36 and he had 43, so that would put him 1 behind potentially. And he is. I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a bit more than that. And he's
not
number one
behind, but he's second.
He's number 1 for kicks, and I think he's number 3 for meters gained. I think Bailey Dale might lead that stat at the Dogs. Yeah. But he's certainly right up there amongst it. And look,
Bailey Dale has 7,000 metres gained against us every time. So,
and he had a game against someone where he had 48 touches. Bailey Dale, he had 30 at half time or something. So,
I can't confirm he's 1 behind.
1 behind.
He's 1 behind.
So,
there you go.
Because I knew he was 8 behind, and then he had 43. So that was just that Nick had so many. But without digressing too much, we know that Nass is not a free agent, which means that if he was to leave, he would have to be a trade. And is it fair to say, Nick, that he's entering 3 first-round draft pick territory, and therefore neither Port Adelaide nor Adelaide could possibly come to the table?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, the chat over the last few days has been that Melbourne wanted 3 for Cozzy, and Naz is a better player.
Correct. Yeah,
and I mean, Port don't even have a first. I think Adelaide do, but it would be near on impossible for them to get 3 firsts. I mean, Port would have to trade Butters. There'd have to be a bunch of moving parts and pieces. The only way I can see Naz ending up at Port would be is if Butters comes to us in kind of a 1-for-1. And even then, I think at this stage, in current form and all those things, that Naz is still worth more.
It's only me reading it on that topic and not Mail or anything like that. But I get the feeling that obviously we were into Bergman, Port Adelaide clearly into Nass. I get the feeling that maybe both clubs, without saying anything, knew that a deal would have to involve the other.
That's right, yeah.
They didn't want to lose him. We don't want to lose Nas. So it was almost to just nod your head at each other and go, yep, you keep yours, we'll keep ours. Don't worry about it. Type of scenario. It kind of felt a bit that way.
The only worry is the Luke Ball scenario, right? Where he wasn't a free agent, decides not to take the contract offer that we offer, and he walks to the draft. I mean, we know that doesn't happen very often anymore, and that often if a player requests to leave and he wants to leave, that often they find a way to get it done. But look, it would be very difficult. It would be very difficult to get a deal done, I think, at this stage. And I think we've been saying for a little while. I think that the Winds have always been whispering a short-term extension for Nas, either to free agency or to just before free agency. And I think that is the way that it's going to play out. I just get that feeling. I know that, it doesn't seem like we're going to leave anything on the table here. This is going to be the biggest contract offer that we've ever made as a club.
Behind the Koenig, maybe.
Well, behind to our own player, I should say.
Yeah.
Finn Callahan and Tom DeConing probably have something to say about that. But to our own player. And I saw a comment from Joey Montagna the other day saying that this is the biggest contract re-signing for our footy club since Plugger left. So, I think that goes to show how important that he is to our footy club, how important that our club knows he is to our future. And it seems like Ross gets that. It seems like they've got a really close relationship. And I think that the footy industry is now paying attention to how good this kid is. Whereas in the past, our best players don't attract that kind of attention and that type of praise. And I think, if the Power or the Crows came to us and said, what do you want for, what do you need for Nas? And we said 3 firsts, I think they'd probably go, yeah, okay. How do we do that? We can't do that. But we understand why you want that much. He's that good. And he's still getting better too. That's the important, he's still so young and he's still developing his own craft. As we've seen over the last month, spending more time in the middle, is pushing forward, is impacting in other ways. That he's getting better too. So I don't see a way that Port can do a trade unless there's players involved. I think he's staying. I think he's staying for a couple at least.
It looks like that, the 2-year drum through to free agency, and that gives us 2 years to convince him to stay, to play finals and to, sell that dream, so to speak. He would play another 50 games through that time between now and then, hopefully, if he doesn't get injured. So we'll see.
What do you make of just while we're on Nas, what did you make of the Brad Hardy? Did you guys see the Brad Hardy story?
Yeah, that'll be in
with the Windhager or Winderlip?
That'll be in my.
Couldn't get his name right, so
that's right. That'll be in my awards later. So I'll tee off on that in a minute. That's part of it.
Okay.
Speaking of the awards, we'll roll into the votes. Obviously, Nas is going to figure fairly prominently in that, and then some of the others. I was going to give Nas and Hall both 3 each, but I thought you can't. 3 is probably not quite high enough with that volume of possessions. So I gave Nas 4 and Max Hall 3, and then just took the votes somewhere else. I think I was going to give Windy 2, but downgraded him to 1 for, he's had 27 possessions. Gave us a lift in the second quarter, really adding that ability to win the ball to his game. Jack Steele, 15 tackles, really battled hard. A couple of turnovers, but overall was pretty good. 1 to Garcia. As I said, those players at the top, Max Hall couldn't have played much better than that, and would have been best on ground if not for Nas's enormous game. Nas, 28 to three-quarter time, playing on half-back. They put him in the middle, and he gets 15 in the last quarter as an on-baller.
6 contested as well, which is big for him.
Yeah, not much. He had 3 shots at goal. That's probably the only thing that stopped him having a perfect game, as he didn't nut 1 or 2 of those. But, that's being picky. H, your 10?
Yeah, I've basically gone the same way you did, except I've given Nas 5. I just thought that he was that influential on the game that it was I almost I wanted to maybe try to spread some more out of this, but I just could not take any more off him. It's almost a 6 or 7 voter if he kicks 2 of those goals or so. Probably it's a fantastic game. There's maybe like a couple of little moments, maybe where he's once again doing that, trying to make something out of nothing again a bit, but he kind of had to on the night. There was a few moments where you're sort of thinking he's got to create something here, and he tried, and a couple of times it didn't work for him, but the situation we didn't actually lose the ball. So it didn't really have that, we've turned it over again sort of impact on him on the night, that sort of thing. So, a couple more held marks or a couple more players running to the right spot in the forward line, that sort of thing. And it's a couple more targets again, and makes it just an unbelievable game. So, 5 for him, 2 for Hall. Again, deserved more. Could have possibly given him 1 or 2 more of the other ones, but I just had a couple of others I wanted to squeeze in. Same with you, Windy, Steele, and Garcia all one. A couple of other players I was teetering giving one as well, but just couldn't squeeze them all in with Naz taking the load on the game and taking the load on the votes.
Nick, your allocation?
Pretty similar. I gave 1 to Windhager, Marshall, Steele, and Hugo Garcia, just for their work around the middle of the ground. I gave 3 votes to Max Hall and Naz together. I mean, each. I couldn't split them. I know Naz had the volume, but Hall's impact, I think, was immense. And I see this. There's been a flurry of statistics and rating data and stuff come out over the last couple of days about historically high ratings for young players or players in their first 15 or 20 games. That Max Hall has hit that type of elite echelon for that sort of game. It was just, I mean, he's been building, all season. Max has been building to this type of performance, and his last month has been phenomenal. His last fortnight has been elite, and I think that it just kind of shows the ability and the difference that some confidence can make to a young player. And we know that Max Hall was a mature age rookie, came in through the mid-season draft, was overlooked a number of times through the AFL draft and that pathway, but has always had talent. I know people that watched Box Hill almost every week saying, why isn't this kid playing AFL? This kid's way too good for the VFL. He should be in the AFL, and he's showing why. And I just couldn't split the two. I thought both of them for very different reasons, but quite clearly the 2 best players on the ground. And it's not often that you have a team lose by 4 goals, and still have the 2 best players on the ground. So, just really impressive by both of them. I do think, Max is also out of contract at the end of the season. So imagine they're putting some work into getting his signature on a dotted line too.
Yeah, those mid-season draftees can either sign for 6 months or 18, and he did the 18-month contract. I imagine he looks pretty happy and will probably stay, I would think. Hasn't had that much attention. My Jason Blake Award, it's interesting, at quarter time in a chat group we're all in, I was calling for him to be delisted and never play again, similar to Riley Bono last year when Rossline actually did that to him, subbed him out, and that was it. So Angus Hastie in the first quarter and a bit turned 3 over terribly that cost us goals, and gave a free kick away to Ginnivan, which gave away another one. And I was thinking, miles out of his depth. And, a young kid playing his first full game, he's been either subbed in or subbed out of every other game he's played, the 9 previously, hadn't played for 12 weeks at AFL level. He could have easily dropped his head and thought, I'm in and out of the side, I've stuffed a few of these up, they're going to drop me. but he didn't do that. I thought his second half was very good. I thought his desperation, his reading of the play, his pace, that spoil in the last quarter, the mark he took jumping over the pack. I thought for a player that had made that many mistakes early, he did everything he possibly could to make that right. So if you put down skill errors, everyone can make those. They were bad ones, but if he adjusts to the level and hopefully they give him a chance to do that, I'd rather see him take those things on than, Brad Hill play a full game, with all due respect to him. And, we know what's going to happen in that situation or what he's going to give. So, credit to Angus Hastie for not dropping his head. Clearly it wasn't a perfect game, but it was a much better second half. Nick, your Jason Blake?
Yeah, I said to you just before we started recording, I thought it showed great character from Hastie to bounce back the way that he did and keep fighting and putting himself in a position to have an impact. And I thought that was really impressive. Controversial choice for my Jason Blake. I'm going to give it to the captain, Jack Steele, who I think has copped a lot of negative reaction, I guess, over the last couple of seasons. Some warranted, a lot of it not. He's clearly not the elite Jack Steele that came top 3 in the Brownlow in 2020, 2021-ish, top 5 a year after. Those sorts of things. He's not that same player. I think the game has evolved. Midfields have evolved. His opponents have evolved. I think so much has changed since then. He's clearly not that same player, but you do know what you're going to get from Jack Steele, and you talk about that 100% effort, 100% of the time. That's what you're going to get from Jack Steele, and I think we will see his game evolve, and we have been seeing that evolve over the course of the year. He's no longer going to be that guy that's going to get 33, 35 every week in the middle, but he is a guy that's going to get you 25, 26 touches and 10 plus tackles and do all those 1%ers. And for a team that's kind of crying out for leadership, screaming out for leadership, that's how Jack Steele leads from the front, is doing those things and making an impact in ways that he can impact, and that is the defensive efforts, the chasing, the tackling, the put your body on the line, the things that are going to make your teammates walk taller, and he does all those things. And I think that he does cop a lot of flack because he's not the Jack Steele that could have won a Brownlow. But he's a different Jack Steele, and we're a different team. We play differently. But he's playing his role. And I think that he unfairly now gets a bad rap because of his past elite performances and the way that he's playing now, and his role now is different to that. So, 15 tackles by anyone is an incredible game, incredible effort, and this is just stock standard for Jack Steele now to have 10, 12 plus tackles. So, he's playing his role and he's doing his job.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I always find it very difficult to be critical of what he brings. H, your Jason Blake?
In very similar vein to what Nick's going with Jack Steele there. Guy that's been blasted over the last few weeks for the way he plays, and he continues to turn up and win his own ball. And as we saw on the weekend, he's really nice finish for a goal early on. And Marcus Wingenhager, he's not going to get a lot of plaudits from anyone outside of probably our own fans at times. But he's a two-way runner. He defends his player. He wins his own ball. He's kicking goals. There's not much more you can ask from him. But from outside of, us, outside of fans, outside of the ones who actually look at what he's doing, there's not a lot of, plaudits for what he does. And he's been playing some really good football and probably deserves a lot more than what he's been getting lately. So, we all gave him votes for good reason, but it's probably not going to get many anywhere else.
Yeah, that's right. He's had 22 kicks and, clearances and everything else that sort of comes with it. So, he doesn't get the plaudits of others because they see him as sort of a dour tagger. But There's a lot more to what he's doing than that. The Shannon Knoll Award, what I mentioned media, there's a couple of parts to it. One was just there's a lot of rubbish, I guess. It's not quite going to be, Phil's rant of the other day, but just a couple of things that caught my attention that, some to do with us and some more broadly. So Brad Hardy, I know he has some mail and that he somewhat close to Ross and through his Fremantle days and other bits and pieces, but he was one of them, obviously. So whether that story is true or not, now I've heard from a few people sort of close to Scott Lucas, who's in the management around Marcus Windhager, that there is some discussion around his contract that's not going necessarily as well as they would have liked, and that they feel that St Kilda and Silvani and that undercut a little bit, came back with a rubbish offer, and maybe, Windhager wants to stay and his manager wants him to stay and the club wants him, but there's a conversation around that. If there is any credit to him being left out of the best 23 on the whiteboard, I'm sure that's an accident, a stupid one, but I'm sure it's an accident. But, to have somebody, throw sort of scuttlebutt out that, like, he's unhappy and that might impact a decision, and not even get the bloke's name right. I mean, Jason Winderlich played for Essendon and Thorpedale, a decade ago. Marcus Windhager, Windhager. They're not as close as it may seem in those names. But, I mean, when you've got people, talking about rumour and innuendo and, they're throwing that sort of shit out there and they can't even get close. And I read an article the other day on one of the websites when Nass, after his 43 possession game, where they were talking about, he's going to be, capturing the attention of umpires and he's a Brownlow player if he plays in a side that wins more games. And the next comment was, is St Kilda holding him back and he needs to, I can't remember them writing articles like that about anybody else. Do you reckon they sit there to Nick Larkey and say, Nick Larkey would win a Coleman medal if he played for Brisbane, or, he should go to Geelong because they need another one of those recruits, or, all of that type of stuff. I just think that's ridiculous. It's almost lobbying on behalf of somebody out there where it's, are you a South Australian and you want him to leave? Are you a Geelong or Collingwood supporter that want those sides to get bigger and bigger? But to say shit like, does he have to leave St Kilda for his own career? That's garbage. There are plenty. I mean, should Zach Merritt leave Essendon? Should Christian Petrarca leave Melbourne? Should, were they saying that LDU had to leave North Melbourne and play for somebody that would win twice as many games? And even the people pushing the article now around the mid-season tournament and all of that type of stuff, can people not understand that as somebody who works in the media, the AFL are toying with the prospect of a wildcard system to go into the finals. And if they slip this through, where they put a little mid-season competition in there when everybody plays each other once, that's a way of then bringing in the wildcard system under that, which doesn't actually look so bad. So don't just play into this shit. Understand the agenda and where it's coming from. It's I can't grasp it. There's a total, I don't know, a tendency for people to be throwing darts at boards and, without any regard for, the bigger picture or what impact that has on the market and all that type of stuff. So it's annoying me, that type of stuff at the moment. So
what's funny about that Brownlow medal discussion and St Kilda holding his back is that, those same people will be saying, St Kilda's always had great players that have won Brownlow medals, but never great teams and those sorts of things. We'd be right up there in terms of the number of players and number of Brownlow medals that our team has won.
I actually think we are first to Sydney.
Yeah. Plugger won a Brownlow and team that didn't win, that didn't make the finals. I mean, we know Harves won them in finals years, but no one was talking about St Kilda's holding Robert Harvey back from winning Brownlow medals and that sort of stuff. That stuff's just, it's just crap.
Yeah, that's my rant. But H, your Shannon Knoll.
Being at the game on Saturday, there was a definite someone who was a little bit off their game, and he's been talking about it since. And you're sort of thinking maybe a week off would have been an idea, but the guy,
friend of the pod,
Ollie Gill, you sounded awful. So you need to lift this Sunday. Had to come back and just really, really let it rip this week and get us up and about because, yeah, there was more croaks and a frog pond on the weekend, and it was pretty hard to listen to at times. So, yeah, rest up and get right for Sunday.
That's a good shout, our very own.
Yeah, I saw him talking about what was it, throat awareness on socials after. Talking about our own, my Shannon Knoll award goes to our forward line. Now, there is a caveat here in that we need help. Our forward line needs help. It can't be left to Cooper Sharman and Mitch Owens all the time. We know that they're not number one forwards, either of them. We know that they're not massive. They shouldn't be taking the number one and number two defenders every week, but out of circumstance and out of necessity, they are. But guys like Mason Wood and Dan Butler and Jack Higgins to some extent over the last month or so, you've got to take those opportunities. Mason Wood, up until 6 weeks ago, they've been one of our best kicks for goal over the last 3-4 years. I'm not quite sure what's happened to his goal kicking, but there's been a number of opportunities over the last month that would have had us in positions either to come back in a game or take a lead or extend a lead that he hasn't taken, and it's cost us. And when you talk about the state of our forward line and we are undersized, we are young. It's those guys, it's the Woods and the Butlers and the Higgins that need to stand up and take those opportunities when they're there. Because just purely looking at the numbers, right? Like, let me just change my Chrome tabs. But our disposal efficiency over the course of a ground is not bad. Over the course of the season, our average is about 72%. We hit 70% disposal efficiency on the weekend. Our efficiency inside 50 against Hawthorn was 51%. And our average for the season is 49%. Like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And yes, there are excuses and justifications and all those sorts of things. But when you have the ball and you have the opportunity, there is no excuse. There is no justification for not taking those ones. And yes, some are on the boundary and they're harder, and your conversion ratings and all those types of things, expected goals and whatever are harder and less. But when you're 35, 40 meters out from goal on slight angles, there is no player in the AFL that should miss that. Set shots, no real pressure. And these guys have to be better at that. Doesn't matter if you're Mason Wood or Dan Butler or Mitch Owens or Cooper Sharman. You've got to take those opportunities because, when you're a developing team like us, we don't get that many. And so when we do get them, you've got to make the most of them. And so our forward line as a whole, I think, has to lift. And,
Yeah, we would have all got multiple messages through those last few games saying what's happened to Mason Wood's goal kicking. It's been a constant theme. And as you say, if it's so hard for us to get shots at goal, you have to take those chances when they come. And, Sharman early in the third and then running into that open goal. And someone replied to one of our tweets, I can't remember who it was, but they said that we don't have a forward line. We have 6 forwards playing in that area, and it's like almost individuals running around doing their thing. And I'm not saying they're selfish players, but there's no cohesion for whatever reason between them. We have 6 forwards, but not a forward line, which I think was a pretty reasonable way to discover it.
Well, I think, we've missed the 2 guys, and again, I'm not kind of complaining about it, but we've lost the 2 guys that I guess kept the structure in there. In Max King, and we know that he's had his injury issues and he hasn't always been there. But in terms of straightening us up, he's the big bloke at the top of the goal square who you can aim for and you can build your forward line around. Tim Membry was the other one. He's been a staple, our second tall, if not the number 1 tall in that forward line for a decade. And he's not there. And so we've kind of, like you said, we've kind of got a bunch of blokes who are all forwards, but there's no real structure up there, and they've got to figure something out. We'll hopefully get King back round 1 next year, and all those sorts of things. You hope, and organically that frees up. It means that Cooper Sharma's not getting your your Harris Andrews and your Stephen Mays and your number one defenders every week. But you hope that someone else can stand up, and whether it's Owens or he moves more into the middle and someone else steps forward, and whatever that looks like, that someone else can kind of step in there and lessen the load, because there's too much being left to too few at the moment.
Yep, 100%. And it's been the bugbear for a long time. H, before we previewed the game, I think you wanted to give a shout out to certain sections of our supporter base.
Yeah, it just had a bit of good feedback after the game. So they had a few people come up and just say, yeah, thanks for doing the pod, thanks for the work we're doing, thanks for basically giving them something to listen to and to somewhere to go was the main thing. Somewhere for them to, I guess, confide within other people going through the same thing week to week and that sort of thing. And they're all positive feedback, which is great. So if you see any of us around, just come say good day and that sort of thing. And the underlying thing that seemed to be what everyone wanted was that's so St Kilda. We thought it might have been a bit stale and that sort of thing, but seems to be what the fans want. So I was sort of thinking about it, and I sort at the same time was going, well, this kind of one I was thinking of myself before was even brought up by anyone, and that was just the whole fact that we don't play Sydney until this week, and it's amazing how we never play them, we haven't played them, and we get them just as they're hitting their strap. So there's a little one to throw to. I was just thinking about, and that's a fun one to think about now. And you go, well, it just seems to be the way. There always seems to be one team that we won't play till the end of the season when they're playing good football at that point where they're racing towards the finals or something like that. So Sydney's the team this year, but I don't think they're going to make the finals. They're probably too far back, but they certainly hit their straps now. And about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I would have gone, hey, we're right in this, but it was still a chance, but they're playing much better than what they were previously.
Yeah, they are. It is frustrating. Obviously, last year we weren't expected to do all that much against them, and that turned into be a bit of a miracle. And you just hope that it's our effort that is maintained at that level. Across the board. I guess turning our attention to that game, we do have that Rod Butters chat in the cam. It takes a little bit of editing. That one, there was a few little bits and pieces with it, so that'll be up shortly. That has been recorded, so stand by for that one over the coming days. But in terms of changes, H, looking at the two, so Paddy Dow made steps in the right direction, but we'll need a couple more. He's still not playing a full game at that level. Boxall was okay. Travalia was okay. Max Heath is the interesting one. Max Heath, 21 possessions, 6 marks, 3 clearances, 26 hit-outs and a goal. Is it time, given, Sydney lacking a bit of their usual height down back and, the need to potentially pick a second ruckman, for him to maybe get an opportunity in this game? And is there anything else you could do? Obviously, Webster goes out for at least a month, and you would hope that Stocker would be right to play.
Yeah, the interesting thing was brought up on the weekend when I was talking to a few people are going, if we are looking at bringing decoding with the possibility of Marshall staying and that sort of thing, should we be trialling a bit of this 2 ruckman system already? Should we be giving it a go and seeing how it works? It seems to be working for a few teams this year. I mean, you look at Hawthorn the weekend, the 2 ruckman was probably one of the areas that they beat us with. They were able to switch and give a bit of a rest and just run Marshall ragged. He had a lot of work to do when you're playing against a couple of players. So, but the Heath one's an interesting one, whether Heath is the choice. Then you sort of go, Was Boyd a good choice at picking up? Is that something we've seen him for one game? Is that going to be something we're not going to see again, or what's the what's the go with Heath? Is this going to be a one and gun opportunity? Is that going to be, if he plays well, he'll get possibly another game? If he doesn't show too much, that's pretty well it. And that's where it feels like it's going to sit. It's maybe a bit of time for trial and error, just to see what things do. So play kids, maybe give this 2 ruckman thing a go just to see how it goes. Marshall's obviously going to play the number 1, whether that is the same situation next year, but I'd say you'd find probably De Koning would be the number 1 in the ruck, with basically back to how it was with him and Ryder, with Marshall and Ryder back a couple of years ago, which when we look back at, that worked fantastic. So yeah, it's maybe just those minor changes I'd be thinking, like your Stocker for Webster, and does Heath, I don't know, do we bring out a Small in does Hill not make it this week? He was going to be sub. He probably would have only played half a quarter if Webster doesn't go off early. So is he the one in the gun here that to be dropped?
Couple of things here. I mean, just on Max Heath, I've said it a couple of times on this show, and my source on this is generally pretty spot on this type of stuff. The club internally, the footy department, doesn't rate Max Heath as a ruckman because he can't run. And it's as simple as that. And now I can't speak to how they feel about him playing out of the goal square as a forward. I mean, clearly he spent some time in the twos doing that. And you know, based on what I said earlier about our forward line and needing some structure and some tall timber, etc., I think it's a great shout to play Max Heath as a forward 20 minutes a quarter and give Rowe a chop out for 5 minutes a quarter or 3 minutes a quarter and just see what he can do. I mean, we've got, 6 weeks left, 7 weeks left, whatever. See what he can do. I have a feeling that, you know, as much as a player's papers can be stamped without it officially happening, I feel like that's the case with Max Heath. I don't think he'll be on our list next year. But at this point, what have we got to lose? He might be one of those guys that just doesn't play well at VFL level, or his numbers on the track don't equate to what he can do. You know, once the adrenaline comes in when you cross that white line in senior footy. I mean, there are plenty of examples of that, and we are crying out for a tall forward, someone who can lead in a straight line, clunk a mark, and kick straight. I mean, he's a nice kick of the ball. He can take a mark. He's quick enough off the mark. I know that there are questions about his tank and his aerobic capacity and all that sort of stuff, which is legitimate in today's game. But if you sit him at the top of the goal square and have him lead, you know, he knows some leading patterns and all those type of things. Like, get him in there, straighten up the forward line, see if he can clunk a mark or two and kick a goal or two, and see what he can do, because he might be an option as a forward. We've seen plenty of kids who have been the ruckman at junior footy because of their height and their size turn into forwards at senior level because they don't have the tank or they don't have the running ability or whatever it is to be a full-time ruckman. But, you know, get him in the senior squad, in the senior team, and he has a role to play. And so I reckon get him in there for the last 2 months of the season, play him out of the goal square, give Rowe a chop out, and just see what happens, because who knows? I mean, what do we have to lose? At the moment, we've got, you know, Isaac Keeler barely touching the ball, you know, every second week. How is it any worse to have Max Heath come in and not touch the ball for a week or two and see what happens? You know, he's a bigger body than Keeler. He's not going to get out muscled as easily. He's certainly not, you know, the biggest ruckman. And you'd imagine coming up against a guy like Brodie Grundy or Max Gawn and these guys, he's not going to be easy for him, but I'm not suggesting that we play him as a first ruck. You throw him in there when they've got their second ruck, or you just to ruck in the forward line, or whatever it is, just to give Rowe a chop out. But see what he's got. I think that we should have been saying it for a couple of weeks. Get him in there, play him as a forward, and see what he can do, because he's got a lot of attributes that could equate to a decent forward half player at this level. And funnily enough, we have a hole in that area. It would help to have a 6'7", 6'8" guy at the top of the goal square leading out, for guys like Naz and Sinks and whatever to put in front of them. So yeah, I would love for Max Heath to get a crack over the next couple of weeks. Like I said, I'm expecting that he won't be on our list next season. And everything that I hear out of the club is that Dodson has gone past him in terms of pure ruck craft and athletic ability as a ruckman. But that doesn't mean that Max Heath can't be a decent forward for a period. And if ever we're going to try it, now's the time. The other one's James Barrett as a defender. I think now that we've brought Taru in and he's not losing his place anytime soon, I'm not sure that there's a role for him, but I'd love to see him given a crack. Again, just to help straighten up that spine. If you want to give Caminiti a rest, he's done a power of work. I really like Caminiti in defence. It's certainly not a crack at him, but he hasn't been in the system very long, and it's coming to the end of another long season where he's played more footy than ever, in a new role, and he's still learning, and maybe a week or two off would be good for him, just to kind of regroup, reset, watch some games from the coach's box or whatever. Give Barrett a crack and see what he can do, because I think it seems internally that there's big raps on him as well, and I'd love to see what he can do. And as I've said every week, get Hugh Boxall in.
Yeah. Well, that's right. The Max Heath one, a bit of mail suggests he'll be at Melbourne next year. I think they've put the feelers out already.
They liked him when we drafted him. Yeah.
So I'm kind of hearing that. But yeah, and the ruck debate's interesting because Rowan Marshall is almost an old-fashioned follower. Like you say, look at what Jim Steins was, obviously a fine ruckman, but would go around the ground and get a stack of possessions. Rowan Marshall's probably the least effective element of his game is tap work, which I know he's not hopeless at it, but I think it was 14 hit-outs to advantage again on the weekend and 58 hit-outs that Meek got. He's a better ruckman around the ground than most players in the competition, with the exception of maybe a Gawn or, you look at, say, Grundy this week. And he's certainly serviceable as a pure ruckman, but that's where they probably look at De Koning thinking that maybe against the best ruckman in the competition, he gives us a little bit more there. And then Marshall, the other mail I've suggested that there is no suggestion from St Kilda or Rowan Marshall that he would leave the club. So I'm not hearing anything to suggest that either party wants that. I think that St Kilda want to keep him and he wants to stay and prepared to make it work. So I get the feeling that even if De Koning comes on board, there'll still be a role for Rowan. I hope so. He's, favourite son. And I hope that does continue. But yeah, we certainly need somebody who's maybe a bit more dynamic as a pure ruckman, and then allow Marshall to do what he does best. And then you look at some of the others. So Zane Cordy likely to play for Sandy this week, but I'm more in your line of thinking, Nick, that even if he plays well over a couple of weeks, I'd be inclined, even if you pick Heath, you just throw Keeler back again where he was all right against Brisbane. Yep. Do you stick with Caminiti? Do you go with a couple of other things? So I'd be more inclined to try that. Hopefully Stocker plays this week as a straight swap for Webster. We actually missed having no Stocker and then having Webster go down, given Hawthorn's sweep of small forwards. That hurt us a lot. So we certainly need to have him back into the fold. And then Boxall, Travalia, those sorts of kids, where do we go from there? So obviously Webster's one out. And what else do they do? I hope that Heath, they do have a look at him and as you say, see how that two ruckman system works. Sydney starting to get a few back and starting to find form. Obviously a good win over Freo, but we stacked up all right against the Dockers. They lost to the Dogs the week before. They haven't travelled superbly this year, but they're clearly a capable side coming off a grand final last year, but not an awful matchup by any means for us at Marvel this week. A few other things that we wanted to discuss. A shout out, you mentioned fans before, H. I didn't know either of these fans enormously well. I had a little bit to do with one of them, but obviously the Saints faithful lost a couple last week in Jan Park and Wendy Stapleton. I didn't know Jan particularly well, but a lot of people have spoken glowingly of her. I think most of us would have run into Wendy from time to time and certainly seen her face around the traps, but yet loyal, passionate, courageous Saints fans. So, it was very sad to hear of their passing over the last week or so. So a cheerio to all of them. Nick and H, I'm sure they're names that you would have come across more than once over the journey.
Yeah, I think, just characters as part of the crew, right? I mean, I'm the same as you. I didn't know Jan, met Wendy a bunch of times, and I think a lot of the people that we count as friends counted Wendy as their friends. So, cross paths all the time at the footy. I didn't know her particularly well, but Facebook friends and friends of friends and all those sorts of things. So, yeah, sad week when loyal Saints and part of the crowd pass, and to have two in a week is sad.
Yeah,
definitely.
Two that one of our regular affiliates, Michael, knows well and
Shay,
attended. Shay attended many games with them. So, as I say, close to people we know. Like, we didn't know them really well ourselves, but definitely people you would see at games and pass quite often. And so for the few that we know that know them well, that good bit of a shout out to them and hope they're going well.
And anyone just on those two, if you've got some stories you want to share about your footy experiences with Jan and Wendy, feel free to drop us a line on socials, and happy to retweet and share some of those favourite stories and memories of the loyal Saints family.
Absolutely. It's always sad when you have that news. But speaking of the loyal Saints family, we did put a post up over the last couple of days in regards to favourite Saints memories, and a lot of those would have been spent with other fans. I nominated, it's always a difficult one to articulate for most of us that are still tortured by it, but 2010, obviously the moment when Goddard marked in gold. But I think the majority of Saints fans, you never take anything for granted, but I think most of us thought we were going to win the game at that point. I did. Didn't think it was a certainty, but your understanding of footy suggests that you usually win games when you do that, if you come from that sort of position and take momentum. And there was that moment sort of soaking it in around the MCG, kind of thinking, look at this, look at this atmosphere. It was a beautiful day at that point, thinking this is what it feels like. And there was kind of a calmness to it. And it's what I imagine winning a flag is like. And it's the only glimpse I have into that was what that moment felt like. So I always position that. And even in the aftermath, I know, Nick, I ran into you outside the ground. You'd just come back from overseas to be at the game. And I remember we didn't necessarily say much. I think we gave each other a bit of a hug and sort of just sat there and spoke. I then ran into my cousin, who was a Collingwood supporter, and that was the same thing. We sort of didn't really know what to do. It was like you kind of just said, well, what on earth just happened? What happens now? And everything that sort of comes out of that. So that's one I definitely wanted to mention. And I'll handball to you as well to talk about that. But also, you mentioned the 05 qualifying final. I know H and I were at Moorabbin that night. St Kilda used to put it on the big screen, and there were a lot of fans from the old Saintsational that were there. Barks Forever, Moose, a lot of those sorts of people. And I just remember the atmosphere, and the whole room was packed. And there was a scene in the last quarter when they panned up to our coach's box, and Matt Rendell was standing up stacking papers. And I remember Moose jumping up and turning around going, they're packing up in the fucking box. We've won. And because I hadn't blown the siren yet. And all of that reaction. And I had the long drive back to Trafalgar with my dad and couldn't sleep that night. And I had a PlayStation in my room. I remember playing Crash Bandicoot until about 5 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep just through that jubilation. So, yeah, Nick, there's a few that stand out.
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, just on those two. I mean, that, like you said, that 30 seconds or 60 seconds, it didn't last very long, but that feeling of shit, I think we're going to win this now. And this is what it feels like to win a premiership. Obviously it wasn't. But that's as close as we've been in our lifetime. The Adelaide one, I was in Adelaide again with a bunch of the Sensational crew. I think Benny was one of the crew that came over on the train with us. Yes. Emma, a bunch of others from Sensational got on the train that morning. Maybe it was the night before. Went overnight, got there in the morning, spent most of the day drinking. I think we played the Holy Grail at the pub on the jukebox about 70 million times that afternoon before heading over to the ground. And then the crowd after the game, after the final siren, there was probably 50 or 60 Saints fans that all kind of first went down to the boundary line and to the fence and kind of celebrated on the fence. And then as the security guards pushed us back, we were probably still there an hour later singing the song in the tunnels and around the stadium before they kicked us out. And then I remember heading into the city, got mail from someone. I'm not going to dob them in, not going to dox them who told us, but went to I think it was the Hilton, and saw all the players that were having a beer and celebrating after the game. Stephen Baker was one who stayed up probably a little bit too late. Grant Thomas was there, probably stayed up a little bit too late, and a bunch of the boys out there having a beer and whatever in the bar at the hotel, which was cool. And then back to the pub and back to the motel and continued drinking until the morning and got back on the train and came home. It's just those moments. And again, I think a lot of the memories that we saw on socials from Saints fans when we asked those questions were either particular players. There was a bunch of nominations for Barks' mark against Essendon, and being there. I think Roz, who's always been a loyal listener of the show, said that she was there that day and remembers that. Craig Davenport's goal, Troy Schwartz's goal, all those sorts of moments that meant things. And then there was a bunch of those, this is how I felt when I was with my people, in these moments, in winning games and, finals moments and those sorts of things, because I was with my people and we were together and we celebrated together or we commiserated together. And I think that spoke kind of volumes about the fan base and the journey that I think we've all been on, H.
Yeah, I was going to actually bring up the Schwartz one and thinking of games like that. There's the Schwartz goal, the Gardner goal against Geelong. That whole game was just an amazing game. It's just probably those two you'd put yards ahead of any other home and away games we've ever played. They're probably ones that any replay you see, like they put it on TV quite often. The other one you probably think of again, the Brisbane game was the Milne 11 goals. Probably a few have probably brought that up, and even going back to other one was the 97 prelim, and just games that you see pop up occasionally, and you just remember them. They just bring your memories back, and so wins that you just stick with you forever and go. You just love to get that final win. That would be the one that would just top them all off, and you can forget about all those ones later, possibly.
It's funny that 97 prelim, I was obviously 11 turning 12. We were all young, but I mentioned last year, so my dad and his close mate Graham Davey, who passed last year, formed the Gippsland Supporters Group, which I know, H, you ventured on those buses a few times. There was one in Lakes Entrance and ours that came from Morwell, Moe, etc. and beyond. And I remember I caught the train down with my dad to the prelim in 97. It was just the two of us. We went down there early, I think, to just soak up the atmosphere. And then we came back on the bus with everybody else. So I remember the train ride down and how nervous Dad was. I probably at that stage didn't have the full appreciation for, winning or losing a prelim a little bit, but, Dad at that stage was your long-suffering Saints fan. And I remember, coming back on the bus and we stopped at the Hallam pub and a few of the oldies were having a couple of drinks, and the guy at the pub, there was a banner outside that said, because we were sponsored by Tui's, it said, Tui's Saints to win the flag. I'd like to see that. And I remember Dad and a few people said, "Can we have that sign?" And he said, "Oh, look, if you win the flag, you can have it. Like you can pick it up on the way out." Not satisfied with that, they went outside and climbed up the pole and took it down and carried it in the bus. And Graham, who ran the menswear store at Trafalgar, it was actually on the wall in his store for about the next 25 years. So yeah, that was a funny memory of that particular game. Unfortunately, it didn't go the right way the week after. But yeah, a lot of those fan moments that do stand out. Final siren in the '09 prelim, probably worth a run. But
Nick, the Rewalt goal, the soccer goal.
Yeah,
I think it was Shay that said on Twitter or X, the tackle on McKernan was the moment that she thought that we were on and that was ours. You have these little moments in games where you kind of get those feelings, and that was one of them.
Yeah, and I remember a lot of you talk about sharing it with people, but I remember sort of not high-fiving my dad, but grabbing my dad on the arm when Goddard took that mark, and it was kind of like an unspoken thing where you're like, yeah, I think we're on. Obviously, it didn't quite happen, but yeah, you kind of remember those moments and hope that when they come through, they that they're just as special as you think they will be. In terms of this week's game, as we say, Unpluggered proud to partner with Ticketverse for the 2025 AFL season. Get premium seats at Marvel Stadium's Medallion Club for Saints games, exclusive access, fine dining, bars and more. Visit ticketverse.com.au to explore your options. Tickets sorted. It's a great atmosphere if we win, and it gives you options if we're not playing well either. Couple of questions before we wrap things up. One that was kind of floated last week, just after we spoke to Rod Butters, actually, with that chat coming soon. But Cam says, given Andrew Bassett's presidency and the upcoming end of his term, most clubs have mandatory terms. Do you think the St Kilda Football Club's constitution needs to be revised to allow him to continue as president, considering his strong leadership when it comes to off-field issues? Nick, do you have a view on that?
Yes, I do have a view. I think the constitution is there for a reason. I think that the term limits are there for a reason. I'm a fan of Andrew Bassett generally. I don't love everything that he's said and the way that he said it, but I think he's got our best interests at heart every single time, and I think that he's done a very good job. That being said, you can get stale in these roles. And, we are a young club. We are building a young, competitive, developing football team. These things need to change as well from time to time. And I think that look, I don't think that we need to change our constitution in terms of term limits and all that sort of stuff at all. I think we're building a strong football department. We're building a strong football club, and whoever comes in next will continue that.
Yeah, and if you set the foundation, you just hope that that's it. You set the foundation, and that those who follow in your footsteps keep that fight going and build on that legacy more than anything.
Yeah, it's basically a case of someone's going to come in, someone's got to either bring in their own thing or keep going with what's happening already. And if it's established and it's, I guess, working, you hope you can have someone that can adapt to that. But we need those fresh ideas as well. And he did bring a few in himself. He has changed a few things. He has, I guess, fought a couple of different ways and tried to shake things up a little bit at times. And it'd be interesting to see who we go for. I haven't really heard many names myself as to what could happen, whether it's going to be an internal one perhaps, whether something's just someone completely out of the blue, who knows. So hopefully it's someone with a bit of, I guess, courage to do similar things, someone with a couple of fresh ideas, I guess, a couple of ability to keep going the way we're going currently. And yeah, just need that blend, not someone who's, I guess, coming in and not there for the best, I guess, best intentions, and tries to do too much, or tries to change too much or not do it the way we want to head. So there's a real process that they're going to have to come through to find that right person, and let's hope that like it can keep going on the way we're going currently, and just keep us moving forward.
And the final listener question, obviously, we'll start to talk about player futures and things like that. You look at even, we've raised the topic a few weeks ago. It's time to talk about such and such. Obviously, Jimmy Webster at his age getting a calf injury. You're not saying you put a line through someone like that, but it's a worry. So you look at those sorts of list management decisions. But H, sticking with you, we had someone ask about Steele and Marshall and draft picks. My view is that I wouldn't look Jack Steele as a heart and soul captain of the club. His currency is not going to be through the roof. I'm a hard no on that for both those reasons. One, the currency is not worth it, and B, spiritual leader, if you will. And as I was saying earlier, my mail suggests that Marshall won't be going anywhere, but would you be open to those conversations?
Well, I mean, what would we get for him? Picks that are usable
given his
on
age. Yeah.
Yeah, picks that are usable on father-sons or academy picks and that sort of thing, and that's not really what we want.
We don't have those things anyway.
For what he's worth what he's worth to us, it's worth a lot more than that. So, he may not be the world beater that we had hoped for, and he was close to going back a few years and that, but he still leads the club. He's still probably got a huge impact on the young guys coming through. He's still got plenty to provide to the team as a whole. Not like Geary in his late seasons wasn't exactly a ball magnet or a great user of it or that, but he was a leader and the players looked up to him, and that's what we got. If he ends up going out there and they're getting 10 touches a week or whatever it is, but he's still providing that leadership, that's probably worth more than a lot of things that you can get for him. So it's, as you're saying, it'd be a no. The Marshall one is pretty much only if he goes, I don't want to be here. And that's the only time you would even think about it after you've tried to talk him out of it to begin with. So it's it's pretty much you're looking to go no to any of both of those. Unless worse comes to worse and they say, I just do not want to be here. I can't provide anything. I can't do anything for the team to take it forward. And that's when you got to start thinking about it and work something out. But until that point, they've both still got a lot to provide.
It's an interesting one. I don't want to throw a cat amongst the pigeons or anything, and I don't want either of them to leave. But I think you have to look at every opportunity to make the club better. That's not saying you just accept whatever offer comes in for those guys. I'm not saying that at all. And obviously, if you're going to get offers, then you look at them. I don't want to. I think you're right, Darren. Jack Steele is a heart and soul player. I think that I would love for our squad to play in the manner that Jack Steele plays, and for our mentality and work ethic and commitment and all of those things to be, built around the Jack Steele work ethic and commitment and all of those sorts of things, in his image, I guess. But if someone like GWS, for example, or Gold Coast came and said, we've got pick 8 and we think that someone like Jack Steele can get us over the line and win us a flag, what's it going to take to get Jack Steele off your hands? A top 10 pick's a good place to start. I don't think it's going to happen. I think, like you said, the currency and the value probably isn't there, but right team at the right time, looking for that extra push in the middle, bit of grunt, bit of leadership, to get them over the line. GWS are going to miss Callan Ward, for example. They want Jack Steele to step in there as an old head, a veteran that's going to win them the ball, it's going to chase and tackle and do all those things. And they think that someone like him can get them over the hump. Then, I'll listen to an offer. I probably won't accept it, but you come to me with pick 5 and say, I'm going to give you pick 5 for Jack Steele. All right, I'm listening. And likewise, if someone like Geelong comes to us and says, we think Rowan Marshall can win us a flag. We need a ruckman who can win the ball around the ground and push forward and hit the scoreboard and all those sorts of things. Here's pick 12 and pick 30. Okay, I'm listening. I'm not necessarily going to accept it, but I'm listening. I don't want to lose these guys, but if we're offered overs and we're offered some very, very promising deals in terms of value in return, in ways that we can continue to build and develop this football club with elite talent, then I'm going to listen to it. But yeah, look, I don't think there's a hard no. Like I don't think that either of those guys are completely untouchable, but I think it would have to be a very enticing offer for it to, get past the listening stage.
The Gold Coast did trade pick 3 for Lockie Weller, I think, and that was Brayshaw or something. So they've been prone to do stuff like that in the past.
Didn't they trade pick 7 for Geelong to take Jack Bowes off their hands?
Yeah, just so handed them a
I mean, these deals can happen. We've seen sporting franchises, sporting clubs all over the world make ridiculous offers for players because they have a particular need or put a particular value or whatever on that skill set. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I'm not saying it's likely or I want it to happen, but it's possible.
And teams dive out of the first round sometimes if they're worried about points for free agents not free agents, points for father-son and stuff like that, to maneuver around other things that they can bring in and accumulate points for later on and that type of stuff. So, yeah, it's all possible. And then obviously the Jack Steele conversation at the end of the year around leadership too, whether I'm not knocking captaincy, but whether they have that conversation given where he's at. I mean, I think Tom Morris reported that he'd been a reluctant captain. He's pretty good at it if he is reluctant, but I think he said that he felt that he owed the club in terms of that sense, which says everything you need to know about his character. So no issues on that front. But yeah, we fight on, and as we say, the short game and the long game, I think most of us are okay with the long game. If the short game could give us a little bit of something in the meantime, that would be nice to hang our hat on. But we turn our attention to Sunday against the Swans, and keep chiming away on the socials with your reviews and your ratings via the carriage services, etc., and share us your favourite Saints memories, and hopefully in 3 or 4 years' time we'll all have the same one. But we'll reflect on that next week. Go Saints.